Welcome to Backyard Cigars, and I am so glad that you could join me. Yeah, finally got that out correctly. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where to start here, but I will start by saying that this is the H Upmann, Nicaragua, AJ Fernandez Heritage Toro, a cigar that was released in January of 2022. I believe the third collaboration between H Upmann of Dominican Republic / Nicaragua and AJ Fernandez. And I know that we've done a few videos where we've talked about the whole trademark issue with Cuba and specifically Cohiba and the battle that has ensued between General Cigars and Cuba Tabaco SA, Habanos SA, the Cuban-owned brands that are being made in Dominican Republic and Nicaragua. And when we're talking about these brands that are being made there, we're talking about trademark issues, right? In some cases, trademarks expired, legal loopholes. In other cases, what could be deemed as unethical has become accepted. However you want to look at it, these are things that have occurred with some of the original brands that came out of Cuba and have now been made by other companies. In specific, this H Upmann, of where its home base is in Dominican Republic, is being manufactured by Altaldis. Now, Altaldis is a huge, giant company, and they acquired the rights, trademark rights, to the H Upmann. I think that there have been some instances where I've discussed how it's different in some regards for some of these brands that were originally out of Cuba and are being made in Nicaragua or Dominican Republic. Cohiba's was a case on its own. It's probably the landmark case that hasn't been fully resolved yet. But H Upmann, as we know, is Herman Upmann, created this company way back in the 1840s, opened the factory 1844. Believe the third oldest Cuban brand in existence. But in 1935, H Upmann was sold to Menendez y Garcia. Menendez y Garcia were already doing Monte Cristo, and they acquired the H Upmann brand. Now, in 1960, when the brands were nationalized and Castro took over, Menendez and Garcia took their business to the Canary Islands. And in the Canary Islands, they continued to make their cigars, eventually going to the Dominican Republic. And in its current state, under Altaldis, you have some Nicaragua locations as well, some Nicaragua factories. But this particular cigar is not the Cuban version, obviously. But when you look at it from that angle of, hey, the guys who were making it in Cuba took it to the Canary Islands and then took it to the Dominican Republic. The only thing different, of course, that they were doing was, big difference, right? It was that they were no longer using Cuban tobacco from the Vuelta Abajo region or the Pinal del Rio region, wherever they were getting it from. But they were now using what some might have considered at the time, in the 1960s, mediocre tobacco in comparison to what Cuba had at the time. So remember, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, they weren't as fully developed then as they are now. And while there was a big promise in both of these regions, it wasn't set in stone that this was going to be the answer to Cuba. So it was uncertainty, understandably, but they made it work. And in its current stage, working in a collaboration here with AJ Fernandez, the man with the golden touch, right? The man who can work with just about anything and can make it good. And in this case, there has been a lot of fanfare for the collaborations that AJ has had with Monte Cristo, with H Upmann, you name it. I don't think there's anyone that hasn't worked with AJ. And if there is, I don't know who they are, but AJ is well known, and for a very good reason, because he's a genius. He's a tobacco genius. And he's young, relatively young, for achieving this master status. and it wasn't always that way. When AJ left Cuba, his father left first, I believe, and then he followed, and his father was working with his cousin Nestor Plasencia. Yeah, that's right, Nestor Plasencia. I said that because Nestor Plasencia, they have a family connection with AJ Fernandez's family. So AJ's father, Ismael Fernandez, he is the cousin of Nestor Plasencia, Plasencia Cigars. So he started working, and then AJ came over and got a job as well, and he did some work for the Plasencias. AJ could roll, so he was rolling cigars. Anything to do with tobacco, AJ was involved in it, and he knew his way around the field. So he was, in a sense, he was like the Hiroshi Robaina in that he could do marketing, he could do this, he could do everything. He's just that kind of a guy that if there's something to learn about tobacco, he's going to learn it. And he's been doing this for so long. I mean, he's been doing this since he was a kid, working with his family's business as well as with the government business in Cuba. So he learned the tricks of the trade. He learns the ins and outs. He builds on that. But even then, he doesn't rest on his laurels. Even then, he doesn't rest on his family connections. Even then, he wants to make it on his own. And there's a quote somewhere where Nestor Plasencia was asked, did you imagine that AJ Fernandez would have this type of success? And Nestor very honestly says, I just didn't think that AJ would have the success that he's had. And I don't think he's saying, or he was saying that he thought AJ was not gonna make it. I just think that he probably just didn't imagine that AJ would make it the way he's made it. And and he's really made it, right? He's really made it. We can all agree on that. He's really made it. Well, let's talk about this collaboration right here, right? This 6x54 Toro. 6x54 Toro that sports a Brazilian Matafina wrapper, a Nicaraguan binder, and Nicaraguan filler from AJ's Farms in Nicaragua. Now that's already saying something. AJ's tobaccos are prized because of the secrets to his success. AJ's tobacco is looked up to because of his obsession. Now, a lot of people say, well, the Padrones have obsession. The Casadas have obsession. Carlito Fuente has obsession. They all have it. But people say, and I say people, when I say people, I say people within the industry, say that the obsession runs just a tad bit deeper in AJ. AJ pretty much has made tobacco his entire life since he was a child. Maybe some of the others can say the same. I'm sure Quesada would be able to say the same. But I think, and I don't know this for a fact, I don't know AJ, I've never met AJ, I've only read a lot about him. And it's different when you read something about certain people, individuals, as opposed to when you meet them and you go to their factories and you spend time just looking at some of their process. But it strikes me as, and this is just in the, so to speak, the proof was in the pudding, as in when we smoke AJ Fernandez cigars, that we get a sense of a certain quality and a bang for your buck, right? You can't forget that. Bang for your buck, because this is a $10 cigar, $10.25 cigar, Eastern Coast. And obviously, it could go for more. It could probably does in some places. But what I'm saying is that we smoke a lot of AJ cigars from different lines, and oftentimes we come away highly impressed. And we're not alone. Cigar Aficionado feels the same way. I think it was the second collaboration that AJ did with H Upmann that got him a number 10 spot on the Cigar Aficionado listing. It counts for something. I mean, it's a recognition of that particular cigar offering something unique, something special, something above. Uh, and in AJ's case, most of the time he earns that respect in just in smoking the cigar. And you sit back and you say, "Wow." Earthy leather, small bite of spice, little coffee hint, and this is AJ's DNA all over this cigar. I mean, you get that AJ Fernandez DNA. Uh, they label it a medium to full. This is a full-bodied cigar, and I'm just about not even an inch in. So I'm saying to myself, this is going to be a full-bodied cigar just from the feel of it. AJ is known for making some pretty strong cigars, some pretty full-bodied ones. But the most important thing is that they're good. They're very good. In some instances, one can say they're great. Will this be good, very good, or great? I don't know yet. We're going to find out. But a little bit more detail on the cigar. A little bit more. Tabacalera Fernandez. That's where this was produced. Triple fermented Brazilian Matafina wrapper. Let's talk about that just for a second. Some experts have weighed in that the whole idea of triple fermentation was really something that originated with a marketing approach. It was a something within the marketing side to make something seem a lot more special than what it was. Sort of like when you think of cigars that will talk about different parts of the plant being used for the wrapper, and maybe their particular plant part of the plant is rare. Look, there are two ways to look at this. Marketing approach, yes. Are they trying to make it seem like a little special? It's been triple fermented. So we know that fermentation is what rounds out the cigar flavors, right? The tobacco flavors. It's what gives the tobacco its balance. It's what helps the tobacco get some of that savory flavor that we love, and really gives it, the sweetness and all of those good things that we want in quality tobacco. Fermentation, though, is something that can be seen through an artistic lens with a bit of science. And it's not a set science because everyone does it differently. AJ does it differently from Padron, and so on and so on. And everyone has their tricks that they won't reveal. There's a lot of experimentation that goes on before individuals like AJ Fernandez outline exactly how they're going to ferment, the fermentation process for this particular tobacco from this region in this color grade. It's not set in stone. There's no one perfect way to do it. There's so many variables that there is no set science to it, but there is science to it in terms of the heat, how hot. And look, I've never fermented tobacco, but I can say that the process is usually first fermentation and second fermentation. Third fermentation was something that originated in Cuba with the Cohiba line in the 60s under Castro. And that third fermentation basically is akin to the way bourbon makers will finish a bourbon whiskey in a different type of barrel for 2 or 3 months, right? So you have that finished bourbon. Well, in the case of the cigar tobacco, whether it's the wrapper or the filler, you're aging it in a barrel, wooden barrel, and it's a slower process of aging, of fermenting. Forgive me for saying that, of fermenting it. But it is also a sort of aging, because you're giving it an añejo effect, which is an aging type of effect, and it smooths the tobacco out and it richens it, and it really makes it ultra pleasing. But many within the industry argue about how effective that third fermentation can be, because too much fermentation is no good either. It can burn out the tobacco, rob you of some of those flavors that you were trying to get. So you don't want to go in that direction either. But when you have a guy like AJ Fernandez, who knows what he's doing, who's probably experimented and tried things out, what you get, excuse me, is a cigar that has been carefully fermented so that it didn't get the burnout and still maintained a lot of the flavors. How much of the flavor we're gonna find out. I'm gonna tell you right now that I can say the cigar is very overwhelming. It is the type of cigar I feel that it would not be for a beginner. It's not a good cigar for a beginner. This is a very difficult cigar to give to a beginner. Heavy drying effect. This is a throat scorcher, bit of a throat scorcher. I mean, in regards to just how it dries out the throat area and everything, it's just very earthy, slightly leathery. Not too much leather, just a little bit of spice, a little bit of coffee is what I've gotten so far. But there's this dryness to it. It's not. It does, and it's weird because it doesn't really dry so much. It doesn't dry the palate out too much. It's really on the finish. That's where you start to feel that dryness, and it's tough when I first lit it up and I got it going. It was I took a couple pauses. I mean, I just felt a little overwhelmed by it, and though I liked what I was tasting, I was a little bit concerned about how am I going to get through this, but it's promising and it seems to be rewarding. Now, after the cigar is rolled, it's laid down and aged for 2 more years. 2 more years. Now, that's actually something that a lot of other people do, but not often. Just recently, I reviewed a Amazon Basin from CAO, Extra Añejo, and it was the same deal. They basically laid it down for 2 years after rolling it. Nelson Alfonso has done it with his Alfonso lines as well. We know that a lot of cigar makers will do at least 1 year. You're fermenting it in a certain way, the tobacco, and then you're letting it sit for a year or two. That is just ensuring that when the cigar consumer, the cigar aficionado, the cigar lover buys the cigars, they're ready to go. You don't need to age them any longer. You can if you want, but you don't absolutely have to, because they've done that for you. In some cases, it's an issue. It's not an issue. It becomes something of an issue. An issue for some because they say, well, now I'm being charged more for the cigar because you aged it for 2 more years. But guess what? AJ's not charging you extra for aging it for 2 more years. And you do pay a little bit more of a premium because, yeah, it's been held for 2 years, so tobaccos are a little smoother, perhaps. It's more balanced, more nuanced. All of those things that we want, right? But we don't necessarily want to pay more money for them. That's, everyone has their take on that. But that's what we're talking about here. Triple fermented wrapper, 2-year aged after rolling. So far, after more than an inch here, I'm very happy with this cigar. I like the way it's performing. It's on the stronger side, so I would recommend having a nice meal before having this cigar. Yeah, really nice. Now I'm not feeling that leather as much. I'm getting a little bit more. It's like a tad bit of creaminess mixed with some like fudge chip, something like that, a little bit, and a little bit of pepper, just a little bit. Sweetness is not ultra high on this cigar, but you do get a little bit of sweetness, and it is well balanced so far as I can tell. I say it's overwhelming because of the drying effect, and it started off like, wow, like really, it really took off once it was fully lit. And sometimes cigars will take a little bit to develop, This one didn't need to develop. It was on. And that's a good thing, but kind of caught me off guard in this case with this cigar when I first experienced that. Some people say, well, Jose, you're not talking about the retrohale on the cigar. We pay you to talk about that. We pay you to talk about, the retrohale. We want to know, us retrohalers. You don't care too much about the retrohale. We saw your 4-part series on the retrohale, and it was boring as, heck. But we like you, so we indulged a little bit. But we know that you're not into that. But hey, I would say, look, I've retrohaled it twice so far, in my own way, of course, my own retrohale, and I have found that it's not a cigar I want to retrohale in any form or fashion. And that's just my opinion, and that's just my personal take on it. If you want to try and do so, by all means, you should. You paid money for the cigar, you're a retrohale. But I really feel like in this case, with this cigar specifically, that if you get all crazy with the retrohale, you're going to be robbed of a lot of other flavors, and you're going to find that that overwhelming feeling that I was talking about is going to really, creep up and smack you over the side of the head. Maybe, depending on who you are and, your preference in the flavor profiles. I read a little something that Charlie Minato of Half Wheel wrote, where he talked about this cigar, and he said that this type of blend, this flavor profile, wasn't really much of a thing 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we're talking about, 2013. And cigars were obviously, the market changes, the preferences change, what cigar smokers like changes, whether we believe that the cigar industry influences that or guides us smokers into, certain trends. Regardless of that, our preferences change over time, and what we want in a cigar, or in anything for that matter, changes over time. So, granted, yeah, maybe back in 2013, as far as I can remember, this wasn't the preferred flavor profile. San Andres Maduros weren't the thing, not so much, right? Not like now. And I think to some extent, yeah, Charlie Minato's right. This wasn't a thing, and AJ's kind of made it a thing. He's making it on his own. He's doing it his way, and he's doing it the AJ way. So we're introduced to this, and either you like it or you don't. But you can't deny the quality behind the product so far. I can't. There's a little spice note on the finish. The drying effect hasn't really been hampering the experience at all. You just keep some water nearby. That's it. And you're good. I think that happened in my last review where I was smoking a cigar that was overly dry, and that one was much worse in the sense it was drying out like everything. But I got past it and I enjoyed it. And I think that with this cigar, do the same. So the cigar was released again in January of 2022, but I didn't purchase my cigar until January of 2023. That's this year. So I've had it for a little under 4 months in the humidor at about 65, 66. And I've been really excited about doing a review on this cigar. Not just because it's fun to talk about AJ and his glory and his greatness, but it's also fun smoking his cigars. And at the end of the day, I think that is what matters most, how we enjoy the cigar. And some might say, well, they're a little too strong for me. I do know that AJ makes some cigars that are not this strong, but he's known for this, right? El Diablo. Remember that one with the collaboration with Punch? And, there are these things. Diablo made it to, I believe, the top 20 or 25 in Cigar Aficionado. So, that was a pretty good cigar too. But I digress. What I'm saying is that it's just fun to smoke these cigars. And it's fun to just, try something that is different. I mean, it's just different, and it's different in a good way. Like I said, some people might say, well, they're a little too strong for me. And I might agree with you to a certain point. I might agree with you that maybe they're not an everyday cigar. Maybe not. But I do know a few people out there that like a strong cigar each and every day. Even in the morning, they like to get a little lightheaded. They like it. They prefer it. So there is a crowd of cigar smokers out there that are going to really rejoice in this type of cigar. The presentation on this cigar is very nice. It's got a nice little band there. The secondary band I just took off. It's pleasant to look at. The wrapper's nice. It's matte, mata fina, and it's a nice looking mata fina. It's not as dark as the mata fina that you would see on some of the Liga Privadas or the Undercrowns and stuff like that, or the Sobremesas from Steve Saka. It's not as dark as that, but it's a dark wrapper. And yeah, I think, triple fermenting it, whether you want to say it's marketing or not, I trust AJ. I trust that he's doing the right thing and that he's finishing it, the tobaccos as best as he can in his, obsessive state. So for me, I don't concern myself. And again, I was in charge of the premium for him holding it down for 2 more years afterwards. For $10, I mean, look, I think I got this on a little bit on a discount because I got like 20% off my order. And for the price, I mean, it's just outstanding. In between takes, I retrohaled by mistake. By mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. My nose almost smacked me across the head. The hairs of my nasal cavity were just screaming at me like, what the hell are you doing? What is wrong with you? Do not do that again, please. Enjoy the cigar as is. You don't need to do anything extra to get these flavors. They're coming right at you. Left, right, hook. You got it. I mean, you don't have to worry about this, baby. This takes care of itself. And the burn line has been quite well behaved. Firm ash. And the aroma's nothing to write home about, but it's not bad either. It's just not, it's not all that, but it's an okay aroma. It's not offensive in any way. And the construction is impeccable. And so I just want to say that, look, the draw is really good. It's slightly open, but not like Padron open. Sometimes I think, we think of open draws, we think of like how some of the Padron cigars are. And this is tightly packed, but not too tightly. It's just right. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for checking out Backyard Cigars and tolerating these insanely long videos where I just go off. And I just want to tell you that I really appreciate all the comments, all the interaction I have with all of you. And I want to finish up by just telling you that I can recommend this cigar. I think it's a bit of a niche cigar. I think that, not everyone's going to love it, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the strength. I enjoyed the way the tobacco was well balanced. I enjoyed the bit of leatheriness in the beginning. I enjoyed a little bit of the cream that I got in some parts of the first and a little bit of the second, third. I tolerated and endured the dryness of the cigar and some of that earthy leatheriness that kind of got to me and slightly overwhelmed me in the beginning, the first third. But it shaped up very well, and it was a pleasing, I mean, you got fudge, chocolate in it, you got a little bit of coffee, you got a little bit of pepper, some spices. It was a cigar full of flavor, full of life, full of AJ Fernandez DNA, magical golden touch that we all love. So with that, I tell you, thank you for watching Backyard Cigars, and until next time.